Coming to paperback and Kindle Unlimited, Isis, All That Glitters. The goddess next door takes on a bikini-clad bank robber in this action-packed, all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, All That Glitters in paperback and Kindle Unlimited this March. I got an opportunity to take a look at Incredibles 2 on Netflix last night. And I'm glad that I watched Incredibles 2 on Netflix, because if I had to go to a theater to watch Incredibles 2, I would get up out of my seat within the first 10 minutes of the film and then head over to the box office to insist on getting a refund. Incredibles 2 is an extremely inferior sequel in comparison to Brad Bird's original Incredibles, which was a powerful film about superheroes going out of their way to deal with the struggles of being human and then going out to protect people in spite of the laws that ban them from going out and save the world. Now, that movie was a cinematic masterpiece, but this film is a pale and inferior film, and the reason why Incredibles 2 is pale in comparison to Incredibles 1 is the fact that this film goes out of its way to shove feminism, gynocentrism, and identity politics to the forefront, and all of those attempts to push identity politics and social justice keep the screenwriter Brad Bird from doing justice to the great characters he created over 15 years ago. Now, Incredibles 2 opens up where taking place right a few seconds after Incredibles 1 ends, where the Underminer is getting ready to go out and wreak havoc. And the Incredibles get ready to go into action. And as they're going into action, we start to see the identity politics start to creep into this film when Mr. Incredible is emasculated within the first 10 minutes of the film. And the females of the Incredibles, Elastigirl and Violet, they literally are shown to be smarter and more superior to Mr. Incredible. Dash, who is Mr. Incredible's son, is literally marginalized throughout the entire film. He does not get any sort of real serious character development or really even any sort of serious character interplay between any of the characters. He's literally like a background character, whereas Dash in Incredibles 1 had a major role in the story and it was well developed. In this story, he's literally buried to the background. And the story, as it progresses, we have all this damage blamed on Mr. Incredible, and they're saying that because he and the supers went out here and tried to stop the Underminer, they put the blame on him, and then they go out of their way to say that, oh, they have to stay at this hotel and they have to stay there for 2 weeks, and that's all they have. And then this rich guy comes in and he wants to go out of his way to try to find a way to help the supers come back and get reinstated. Now, this guy, he's played like a beta male. He's a fast-talking salesman, and it looks like he has noble intentions, but then we start to see the SJW narratives start to creep in because he wants Elastigirl to be the face of things because they believe Mr. Incredible does too much damage and that he's too strong. And again, this is another quiet jab at manhood and masculinity, and it's another insult taken directly at men. When I looked at this film, it really took a lot of pot shots at men and took a lot of pot shots at masculinity, and they were trying to make it where, oh, we need to have the woman be the face of things, and the women are supposed to appear to be smarter and better than everyone. And that was a major turnoff for me watching Incredibles, because they have Elastigirl going out to be the breadwinner, and then we have Mr. Incredible, Bob Parr, turned into a complete cuck in the film as a bumbling, stumbling dad, and that he winds up so overwhelmed taking care of the baby, at one point he has to go to Edna mode in order to get help. Again, another attempt at taking a shot at manhood and masculinity in this film, and I was not happy to see that in this film at all, because I remember watching the original Incredibles and how well balanced it was, because when you look at the original Incredibles, everybody got scenes, everybody got stories, everybody got character development, and there was a real solid balance as related to the storytelling. But when I look at Incredibles 2, the storytelling is very uneven, and it's not very well balanced, and the characters aren't that well developed. The storyline winds up not flowing organically, and the reason why the storyline doesn't really flow as organically as the first Incredibles is because of the forced push for feminism and the push for identity politics that is shoved into this movie. And I was looking at some of the scenes between the brother and sister who are working in this with the company where Elastigirl is supposed to be working at, and they make it where the guy is supposed to be big, loud, and dumb, and the woman is supposed to be quiet and smart. The sister is quiet and smart, and her motivations for trying to, well, I'm not going to get into the plot twist just yet, but there's somebody that they create called the, I forget what it's called, this villain, and he's supposed to be manipulating people through the television and the technology. And there's a plot twist that involves the sister of the salesman guy and who's running the corporation, and it just shows, you know, a really condescending attitude that a lot of these feminists have, and they try to interweave it into the story. And that was one of the things that really turned me off about Incredibles 2, was the really condescending nature of the villain. And because Syndrome, you understood where Syndrome was coming from. Syndrome was a big fan of Mr. Incredible, and he had felt, because he had been rejected by Mr. Incredible, he had a motivation to seek revenge. But the motivation of the villain in this one, it was really muddled, and it was muddled all due to the identity politics and the feminism they kept trying to shoehorn into the film. And all that feminism they tried to shoehorn into the film, it just, again, made it hard to watch this movie, because the whole plot about the mind control and the devices, the screen slaver, it just came across as really disjointed and uneven when you compare it to Syndrome. Syndrome's story made a lot of sense. The plot points were easy to follow, but the screen slaver, I just couldn't get into this character because it just didn't come across the same way. It just did not have that organic flow. I mean, the brother wanted to help the supers, but then you have the sister who wanted to destroy the supers, but her plan, again, just did not come across as anything really logical. And everything comes together for a really disjointed climax and a really weak conclusion. So when I was watching Incredibles, I could see what happens when you have a great set of characters and then you have, as I see it, studio meddling coming in, and then people trying to push feminism, gynocentrism, and identity politics to the forefront, and then those elements keeping a story from actualizing the potential. Because Incredibles 2 could have been a great movie. Unfortunately, because of all the feminism, gynocentrism, and identity politics, the film never gets to the level of the first Incredibles, and the story never really rises to a higher level of storytelling. It's one of the weakest sequels I have seen in my years of watching superhero films, and I didn't really see anything super about Incredibles 2. It wasn't incredible, it wasn't fantastic, it was just mediocre. And the reason why, again, it was mediocre was because they wanted to make the film a girl power film instead of making it a film about the family. And the things that they did, minimizing Dash's role, emasculating Mr. Incredible, it was not something I wanted to see in a superhero movie. When I think of Incredibles, I think of like Fantastic Four. They're this family and that they always work together, they always come together, and they always work together to solve problems. But the way they did Mr. Incredible in this film, they practically emasculated Mr. Incredible, and they tried to elevate Elastigirl, and the way they tried to elevate her, really, it just shows how weak feminists are, because they believe they have to tear a man down in order to build a woman up. And that's not how you build a strong heroine. If you're going to go out here and make a heroine strong, then you would think they would go out here and talk about her changing her name from Elastigirl to Mrs. Incredible, because that would show her wanting to be an equal partner and be a wife to Mr. Incredible. You think there'll be Mr. and Mrs. Incredible, but instead we get this whole feminist narrative pushed in The Incredibles, and this gynocentric narrative pushed in The Incredibles, where Elastigirl and Violet, they all get the main plots and the subplots, and the male characters are just played for comic relief. And that's a real insult to many of those fans out there who wanted to just see an action-packed superhero movie they didn't want to be preached to. And when I look at this film and I compare it to other films like the Lucasfilm Star Wars new trilogy, I clearly see a pattern as related to Disney properties, a same pattern that many comic fans see in what they call SJW Marvel Comics. And this whole pattern is designed to try to create strong heroines, but the way they create strong heroines winds up turning people off, because why does a woman have to be strong to, why do we have to tear down a man in order to build up a woman? That right there is something that really bugs me as a writer of heroines, because I don't go out of my way to tear down John Haynes in order to build up Isis and Eastine, and I don't go out of my way to tear down Isis and Eastine to build up John Haynes. I don't do that because I understand that men and women are different. Men and women have different strengths. Men and women have different weaknesses. And men and women need to lean on each other. And that was one of the great things about the original Incredibles, was that even though Bob thought he needed to be strong, he started to realize he needed to lean on his wife. And that was one of the things that made the first Incredibles climax really great, was he realized he didn't need to do everything himself. But in this movie, we have it where this contradiction comes in, where the Elastigirl is shown that she has to do everything herself, and it's a major turnoff, and it just really makes the sequel really weak. People waited for years for the second Incredibles, and sadly, they didn't get anything fantastic. They didn't get anything incredible. All they got was a mediocre sequel with a weak story, weak character development, and weak action sequences that seem to repeat over and over again without any sort of depth, layers, or substance of the original classic film. If you want to see a great superhero movie, I can highly recommend the first Incredibles, but I recommend that you go out of your way to pass on Incredibles 2, because Disney can definitely do better than this mediocre sequel. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications featuring heroines, you can pick up the Isis series, the Eastine series, or the Spinsterella trilogy on Amazon.com by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.